Welcome, welcome, welcome to this edition of I'm Not Crazy, but I'm Dr. Rhonda Mattox, host of this show, board certified, triple fellowship trained psychiatrist. Today, family, we are talking moms, talking value of the village. We're talking about navigating strategies and challenges of getting rest and practicing self care. And I already hear you saying, what is rest? What is self care? Well, I am so glad you asked. Today, we're going to talk about the unique challenges of being a mother and getting in your rest. I have an all star cast of characters that I have known since they were teenagers or teeny boppers. And I think I've probably planned each and every one of their baby showers. So I am auntie to a number of children here. As I am introducing them, please do what you do, rep your city. We have with us the Dr. Sherry Diamond, family medicine extraordinaire. We have the Christy Satterwhite Dunbar, accountant slash mom slash you put it in there. And we also have Ashley, Dr. Ashley Booth joining us today. Please join me in welcoming them. And as you're joining Rep Your City, I would love to also hear, as you're repping your city, whether you are a single mother or a married mother. We have represented on here mothers who are mothers to children who are under 10. We have mothers who are to mothers who are mothers to teenagers. And then we have one very, very lucky child who is the mother of two grown-ups in college, and one that is in the 11th grade, and she is about to be free. Indeed, Dr. Sherry Diamond. That's why she's smiling so big on here, because she is about to be an empty nester, and she can see freedom ring. She can hear it and feel it in her soul. Yes, yes, yes. So as you're joining, please continue to rep your city and let us know if you're single or you're married, and the challenges that you're having with motherhood. I want you to know, as we're talking about strategies, it evolves over time. So you'll start off, and when you first become a mother, there is like rest. What is that? Self care is non existent. And I remember thinking, I can't wait till my daughter can walk. And with walking came new challenges. And then I couldn't wait until she could talk. And then with talking came new challenges. And I couldn't wait until this could happen and that could happen. But with each stage, right about the time I figured out a little bit what I was doing, new challenges would come and they would evolve. So today, I'm bringing in my village of ladies that I've just known, like I said, since they were teens, ladies that I've planned baby showers for. All the baby showers didn't happen, but this is a part of my village that I'm introducing you to. And so, ladies, introduce yourselves and tell them your unique perspectives as mothers, and what challenges that you faced when you first became parents, because we'll have a wide range. And no, Dr. Sherry Diamond is probably a little bit longer ago, so we'll let you think on this thing. But we'll start with you, Ashley, because we're gonna lay aside the titles now, because motherhood taxes you regardless of your title. So, Ashley, what what do you remember about the challenges of just getting the rest? And tell us who you are too.
That is a good question, and it's still Dr. Ashley Booth. I'm a family medicine physician. I started a medical practice a year ago, and so there are some challenges. And in the middle of starting a practice in the pandemic, I also had the nerve to have a baby. So that was my second child. She's 2.5 now. That is pushing the boundaries, and we're trying to figure that out. I also have an 8-year-old. Talk about getting rest and trying to figure out what's next. And when I had my first one, it's like you said, looking forward to all the things. And now she's talking and doing the things, and it's like, okay, now when is she gonna walk back some of the talking? Because I think she's saying a little bit too much. And how do I groom her and let her shine? Also say this is not appropriate, and put that on. So I tell people I wear a lot of hats, but the biggest job and the most demanding yet rewarding job is being a mama. I love it, but it is one of the things that challenges me all the time. Just when you think you figured it out, they switch it up on you and they change it.
So from a 2-year old to an 8-year old, like 6 years between. And starting a business, and and I forgot to say that many of these ladies became mothers while they were in the midst of 80-hour weeks for the record. So okay, so the challenges of getting rest with a 2-year-old and an 8-year-old were what? Everything. Christy, what about you?
Hello, everyone. I am Christy Dunbar. As Dr. Ashley said, we are women that wear many hats. I work full time. I'm a program operations manager for the state of Arkansas. I am the wife of the mayor of Louisville, Arkansas. I am the mother of my one and only child that is soon to be 15. And, that I guess I should introduce him as the know it all because, they know everything, can't tell
Yes.
them anything. Um, and then, I just do a lot and challenging, um, getting self care and rest. That's very challenging. But when I first became a mom, um, I was old, and I don't know what I was thinking. And when I say old, I was almost 40 when I had my child. And I was like, Lord, what was I thinking? So, in which I've had the talk with Rhonda on an occasion or 12, that I should have done this when I was young, because waiting to get this age, and then they say you develop patience and all of that, and I'm like, I'm almost 15 years in this, and I'm like, when is that patience coming? Because I've been waiting on it a long time. And so,
Yes.
and so we're going through what I call the teenager blues, hashtag teenager blues, of knowing everything. But when I became a mom, it was it was definitely eye opening, an experience I thought I would never experience, to be honest. But I've enjoyed it, even though we have that in that valley. I've enjoyed it for the most part. I've definitely enjoyed being his mama. I just need him to listen.
Yes. And as you were talking, my mind went back to Abraham when they had the child, and Abraham said, "You know what, Lord, that's all right." Because he was too old to be running after and saying stop and put down. And so I fully understand Abraham's dilemma when he had Ishmael already and the Lord was talking about, let me give you another child.
Mm,
He was like, you know what, that's all right. Let's just make
mm,
this one work. This is
yes.
Rhonda's rendition. That's not Bible, y'all. That's
Right.
Rhonda's that's
Right.
imagination. Okay, so motherhood as a more mature adult,
Mm-hmm.
definitely with its challenges as well. And Sherry Diamond, what
Mm.
about you?
Um, Gosh, the thing about me is I grew up kind of a little mother already. I'm the oldest of six, and my sibling that was right under me starts 5 years under me. So there was a lot of mothering that was going on. So the technical aspects of mothering for me weren't the things that I was worried about, fixing bottles, changing diapers, giving baby baths, all those things were okay. It didn't take nothing took me by surprise. I
Mm-hmm.
think right now, what I look at is what I was doing at the time that I first became a mother, because I went into my residency program pregnant with my first child. And I think back on it now and I'm like, you were just plumb crazy. But in my mind, I felt like, well, I'm getting started late. So if I'm going to suffer, hey, I'll suffer all at one time, rather than dragging this thing on. so, so, so my oldest is 22 now. She'll be 23 later this year. But I don't, mothering is kind of like marriage. It's kind of like mid school. It's kind of like these big challenges that you just people can tell you how much the hard work is. They can try to describe it as best as they can, but until you actually get into it yourself and dedicate yourself to the process and everything, you really don't know, because your child is different from every other child in a lot of ways. And
Yes.
and I can tell you what, as my oldest started to get older, I was looking at what I thought was a mini me, and her personality turned out to be so different from mine. She's, I'm more sort of level and very analytical and such, and she's like a creative and very emotional. And there are things that I felt like when she was younger, looking back on it now, that I probably missed in terms of how I should have handled her. And so, the challenge for me has been allowing my children to become who they are and not who I thought
Mm.
or, would think that they should be, letting them evolve in their own personalities and sort of helping them to groom that
Yeah.
and be the best individuals that they can be.
And, as you are doing that, helping them to become the best individuals that they can be, your village really helps you in that, because your village will remind you of who you are. I know. And let me just take this opportunity, number one, to salute every mother that is watching, and also to apologize to all the mothers in the land. I didn't have, and I say that because when you are the single auntie and you go to visit, I recall going to visit while I was in med school, my brother, and his mom, his wife, rest her soul, was a stay-at-home mom. And so I would go over there with my living by myself, room dirty, living by myself, and then offer judgment on her. Okay, because she was a stay-at-home mom. So this house should be clean. There should be a meal cooked 3 times a day and all of that. Right. Mothers, I apologize to you for all the judgments that I offered before I was a mother. And former patients, I apologize to you for all the stupid counsel that I offered to you about parenting before I was a parent. Doesn't work like that. But I say that to say, many times before we become a mother, we have heard everybody talk about that mother whose child is literally, it feels like hanging from a chandelier, and the mom is just like having a conversation. You're like, how can you do that? And then you become a mom who is saying, stop, don't do that, or whatever. And you can, I mean, like, bombs can be going off, and you're so exhausted, you're so tired, or whatever. But I'm going to bring you all back to when you first became a mother. I know for me, when I learned that I was going to be a mother, I was living in Los Angeles, and I was like, I want to go home so I can raise my child in the South, in Arkansas, and be around family. And so I came home so I could get help. But because I was a psychiatrist and had heard everything, I didn't want any help. And I remember, I think Sherry was working for was moving away from her family to another city. Ashley, with her first child, was in residency, I think, in another city. Chrissy, you were having some issues. How did that first, those, how were you getting your self-care, if at all, when you first became a mother? That's the question I'm going at, because we have some wonderful mothers of adult kids in here. I think welcome April Worsley, uh, Shauna Flanagan, I Want to Be You One Day, two grown-ups, different ones or whatever. But we have some people who are single parents in here. We have some folks who have young kids. And I want us to offer something about how we wish we had done things differently. Because I know you, so I know you weren't practicing self-care. But looking back on it, what would you tell the mother in that situation who lives in a different city, or who is going through what you were going through, to get her self-care or get her rest when that seems impossible?
Right. Well, I'll say for me, um, my village, as you know, um, was my family. I had come back home. I had my child. I guess I should preface all of this and say, which I should have said in the beginning, I come from that single parent aspect as well as now married. So for 13 and a half years, I was a single parent to my son. And so when my husband and I got married, we've been in it a year and a half now. And so now he's um, taken on the responsibility of me and my son, and they have an awesome relationship. But in the beginning, being that single parent and doing it by myself, well, let me say it wasn't necessarily by myself. I had my family, I had my village, you know. So when I needed a timeout, so to speak, or I needed that break, um, I had my sisters, even my brothers, you know. And at that time, you know, my mom was alive, and I had her. And so, and believe it or not, you guys, when I traveled for my job, and I traveled a lot, shoot, having to come to Little Rock for 2, 3 days of work was like self-care. That was a vacation. I'm just
Yes.
here to tell y'all that was a vacation. And it sounds crazy. Or no, not crazy.
You can say
But
crazy.
but that was a little self-care, you know. And of course I missed him and everything, but I can't thank my village enough. And I've always told them that. And fortunately for me, my twin sister had a daycare. So for my son's first 5 years, he was with his aunt. And so for me to travel on my job and do what I needed to do, I did not have a worry that my son was not being taken care of and not being loved on. You know, she was there when he came into the world. I mean, she held him before I did. And I'm
Wow.
like, can I hold my baby? Can I hold my
So
baby? She was like, in a minute, you know. So my village has been and still is awesome.
now let me tell you what I just heard. What I just heard was you were thrilled to go on work trips so that you can get some sleep.
Mhm.
That I love it. I love it. Anyone else want to jump in?
Yeah, my village was very strong
Sure,
too
Rhonda.
from the
When
beginning. My mom.
go
So
ahead,
when
Dr.
I
Diamond. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. My mom was at the time. Like I said, I started residency pregnant, and so when I had Sydney, my firstborn, she, we were in the middle of rotations. I didn't get very much time off and everything. Not a single parent. My husband has been very supportive and a great dad, even from their infancy. He has been wonderful. But one thing that my mom would do, and this may, some people feel like it creates a sense of separation anxiety from their child to be apart from them, especially when they're little, and especially when they're really tiny, But my mom, for the first two, because I was in residency with both of them, um, she, for a week as newborns, she took them to her house from, I lived in Texarkana, she was in Little Rock, and she would get them and took them for a week for me. So she, did the feedings and did, diaper changes and all that stuff. So I would have like a whole week at one point, especially in those, because you feel like you're about to lose your mind when I mean, it's a tiredness like I
Yes.
have never felt when they have just come home and the feeds are, every hour or two, and and the diaper changes, and it's like just never ending. It's like 24/7. So my mother gave me a break. Now, I wound up in Texarkana for about 7 years, and then I left with no children, and I came back with three. So my husband and I were like, it's time to go on back home. We need some help, you know. And so, and we wanted our kids to grow up around the rest of our family. But I didn't have trouble sort of letting go. That taught me early enough, because I do know people who just absolutely would not leave their children when they were younger. And I understand if there's a problem with the people that you do have around, it's a trust issue. But I had people, thankfully. I thank God that I had folks that I felt like, that I could trust, specifically, my mom, my sister, to be able to take my children on, and I didn't have to worry about them. And for the longest, as long as wherever we would go, my husband and I would always make it a point. We'd take a vacation with the kids as they were growing up, but then we also took a vacation by ourselves, just he and I. And that has been sort of the pattern over the years. But as long as I could pick up the phone and hear their voice, hey, you doing okay? I'm good. As long as I get to talk to them at the end of the night, when everybody's settling down. So the village rocked, especially when they were young.
And I was not that wise. Okay. So the first time I did a work trip away from my husband and my child, I think she was maybe 2.5, and it was completely on accident. I was going on a work trip, so my ticket had been paid for, and my husband was like, I'm gonna wait and see if the tickets go down. And then they didn't. And so I ended up going away without them, because then the tickets became like crazy. So I was there, and my first 2 days, I just slept and slept and slept. And I didn't go anywhere. I mean, I made it to the conference for just a little bit. And I felt, I would wake up and I would like wonder, where am I? Like, where's my baby? And I would panic, right? But I was I didn't get that relaxation time until about 2.5 years into it. And then I was the flip side, the other mother who was just like, we changed our schedule so that while I was away working, he was at home with the child. And when he was away, I was at home with the child. And my child only went to daycare. And I think you probably remember this year, because I was literally having a meltdown. He called me while I was out of town working and said he had to go out of town, and we were going to put our child in. And so we had to find a babysitter really, really quickly. And I was like prepared to leave and come back home at 1 a.m. And I was in tears because I didn't want my baby in a daycare. And let me tell you, family, oh my God. When I went back to pick her up, she was holding on to the daycare lady because she was a child. So there were other kids around, and I was devastated. My feelings were so hurt. And I remember my friend at the time said, that means they treated her well. And I said, that's what that means. She said, yeah. And so I would be off and I wouldn't take her to daycare. But when I joined and laid hold of daycare, even on my off days, eventually I started taking her, and y'all, here done right is good for your sanctified mother and soul. It's like, it really, really is. Family, find you a good daycare. Dr. Booth, you've been trying to get in, honey. Let me let you get in. I think there's a little bit of delay. Come on in.
Sure. Thank you. Well, you mentioned that I had my first, and she was with me during residency, but the backstory is I had her at the end of medical school. But the good thing was I had a break. So I had a year between medical school and residency, and it was a year. I loved being with her. She and I were together. But my husband and I are like the only family that we have here in Savannah. So I didn't really build a good village. I'll be honest about that. And so, but I was like, it's just she and her. We don't really need the other people. Had to go interview for residency. Okay, how are you going to do that? Because your husband has to work. So then I had to scramble and find my village. And it was good. People showed up and they helped. But then I matched in Mississippi. My husband is in Georgia. How are we going to do this? How are we going to make this work? So again, now I am forced to then create. The village came together because my husband stayed in Savannah, and he would come up to me on the weekends. And I was with little baby. He was about 9 months old, and we went to Miss together. And I said, girl, we're going to figure this out. We're going to find our people. And so family showed up, and they would come in and they would help out. And we also had some friends, residents were absolutely amazing. I had one really good girlfriend. She said, I already have two. You bring her over to the same at this point. Bring her over, enjoy it. So she had fun. But it showed me that having a village was very, very important, even though I was kind of like forced to kind of build one. But I absolutely realized that that part of it was important, because then it also allowed me and my husband to develop our relationship again, because going through that long distance, he come in, we now we're willing to get a babysitter so that we could spend a little bit of time together. So it started to help us develop all of that as well.
Right.
So what you are hearing as you're listening is that, we may have grown up singing first comes love, then comes marriage, then comes mommy with the baby carriage, but life happens. And baby, life was lifing with us, and like it was with you. And so that whole you've really not heard a lot of self-care strategy other than we were in survival mode. We were not like practicing self-care or getting rest as much as just hanging on for dear life. Okay. so
Right.
so I remember my husband and I would enjoy travels frequently. And when my daughter came along, we traveled, we still traveled because remember it was free traveling while they were 2 and under. But one time he traveled without me. And I remember going through the airport, and my daughter had had a fussy night and she was having a fussy morning, and she was just screaming, screaming, screaming. And I was walking through the airport, and I know, and people were like probably looking because she was going forward, right? And tears were just streaming down my eyes because I was like, how am I going to get through this? Now, I am a psychiatrist. I am the go to for all of my friends. I am a Sunday school teacher, a woman of faith, but I was literally thinking, I just, I can't do this. And why in the world was everybody saying to me, when are you going to have kids? Like, why would you say that? If you know it's going to be like this, why would you encourage other people to have children? If you are
Right.
single and you just happen to be scrolling by, if they're asking you when you're going to have children, they don't like you. You look like you're having too much fun and they want to mess with your joy. Now, I know on the side, we got some audience members who said that they are parenting adults. We're going to bring you on because right now I'm a teenage mom, and so I don't see the light at the end of the tunnel.
Right. Right.
But now that we have made it through babies, the baby years, and it sounds like we made it through the baby years by relying on our village. Some of our village included our parents, our siblings, certainly our husbands, daycare, work, and we enjoyed work. Uh,
Mm.
relationships. We also enjoyed work travel. Work travel allowed us
Right.
allowed us a little bit of extra moments of solace. Now we've made it through those years. Looking back, what would you say to and we're about to hit teenage, preteens, teenage years, but what would you say to the mothers who are looking on about how to do it a little bit differently so that they can have a little bit more peace? And I'll go first with find you a really, really good daycare or a nanny. I didn't have a nanny, but looking back, I probably would. But what would you guys do?
Well, for me, I had the daycare. And at that time, I mean, it was convenient because we started out, my sister had an in-home daycare in our home. And for the first 2 years after having my son, we actually stayed with my twin sister. So it was the best of every world right there. And so, yeah, having that, because for me, I was traveling weekly. So to know that my son was being taken care of, it was just a relief to not have that worry. So
Mhm.
when you've got it good like that, daycare family combined, there's nothing like it. And I know
That's a
that's
privilege.
not the typical situation for
Mhm.
everybody. I get it, but that was a blessing upon blessings right there,
Mhm.
and then, of course, that village.
Mhm.
I was, even though I enjoyed the work trip, so to speak, to get my rest, but I did miss my child. But it was, and if I had it and to be perfectly honest, if I had it to do all over again, I don't think I would have changed anything about it. I'd have still enjoyed those work trips, you know, but, that daycare thing really saved me,
Yeah.
and my sanity.
Yes.
Um, you know, it
Extended
worked.
family. So
Yes.
extended family,
Mhm.
daycare. We have moved away from having the grandparents in the house and the
Mhm.
siblings and everything. But I think that, looking back, when you have an extended network, and it may not always be, your birth family because
Right.
things happen and there's
Mhm.
estrangement sometimes. But if you can create a tribe of people that you trust, that really can take something off your plate. Anyone else
Right.
want to weigh in before we move on?
What was the question again, Rhonda? How did you phrase it?
What would you tell your younger self or a new mother that you would do differently with the benefit of hindsight?
Oh gosh. Okay. So I would say, and this is something that I learned and have learned as the years have just gone on. They don't stay babies forever.
Oh, yeah.
They grow up. And
Mm.
so the level of attention and the type of attention that they need in the beginning is different.
Mhm.
They're less physically attached to you. My mom said one of the older ladies at our church told her one time, babies get off as they grow, they get out of your lap and into your heart more. And
Mhm.
so, and that's very true. But in terms of the busyness that's involved with the day-to-day task of having to fix the food and having to, make sure their dinner is prepared and having to, put bottles together and wash clothes and all those sorts of things, you don't have to, there's not so much hands-on in that way. So they do get to a point where they become more independent
Mhm.
in some ways. Now sometimes that's a blessing and a curse because they
Mhm.
want to be independent in ways they're not ready for
Mhm.
in the as they're growing. But that's the beauty of it. And so really just I wish I had not been so intense as they were younger and was able to just enjoy the process more. But, having a demanding career, being early in a marriage, and my husband and I still trying to sort of gel and everything, it's a lot. It's a lot. So even though there are things that you would change, I also think we have to cut each other some slack,
Mhm.
cut yourself some slack because
Yeah.
Mhm.
sometimes we're doing at the absolute best that we can. And if you're not perfect, and this is something my mom told me too, she's just like, it's okay if you don't do everything perfectly.
Hmm.
You don't have to be perfect. Like the dishes don't have to get washed. I mean, we clean up our house and make sure the kitchen is clean, but it's like everything doesn't have to be just so. And in this level of perfection that sometimes that we look for, and I think it's pressure we put on us, and then there's
Mhm.
pressure that we feel from the outside
Mhm.
Yes.
that we should
Mhm.
just, we should be a certain way, but nobody can really judge you, because what works for my house may not work for the next person's house, their
Exactly.
personality as far as mothering is concerned.
Hmm.
So, just be easy. There's so many things to worry about in the world. And if you're doing the best you can and training up your child in the way they should go and and
Mhm.
trying to protect them and and everything, really, we feel like a lot of things are controlled by us, and it's really not.
Oh,
Right.
that's good.
Newsflash,
Right.
audience. You don't have as much control as you think you do, even as a
Right.
parent.
Right.
And one thing about mothers is we don't need anyone to condemn us because we condemn ourselves frequently. So I'll put this to you, Dr. Booth. But if you want to answer a little bit of the other question, you can. But how do we start to show ourselves some more grace, um, and invite others to help, and invite strategies to do it? I know I've just discovered laundering services and I haven't used it, but I'm excited about the opportunity based on what my laundry room looks like right now. So laundering services, and and I don't have anybody cleaning my house, but I used to, and so I want to do that. But how do we free up our time and show ourselves some grace? I was driving down the road one day, and I saw a sign that said on a vehicle, it says, "Life's too short to clean your own house." And family, that that freed me and liberated me. It's too short to clean your own house. And so that's when I became a little bit more open. So house cleaning services, I'm going to find one. Laundering services, I'm going to find one. But how do we start to show ourselves some grace and hire out some of these activities that we think we have to do so that we can, in fact, rest and
Mhm.
embrace self-care? Because right now we're talking about how we feel guilty. But I need us to leave our people with how do we get back to just being able to enjoy stuff too?
Yeah, I'm so happy that you asked that because I was going to mention it,
Dr.
ask
Boots
me or
must be
not,
frozen.
because one of the
So,
things,
okay.
oh no,
No, go ahead. I
you
can hear
have
you.
it? Okay. Because one of the things that I've noticed is that as women, a lot of times we don't want to ask for help. And even
Mhm.
mothers, we don't want to ask help. I got it. I can do it. Don't worry about it. But asking for help is not a weakness. And I've had to learn that it's okay if someone says, because a friend had a baby and I said, girl, listen, I'll come over, I'll watch the baby, let you take a nap or something. She was like, no. And I was like, listen, I've been there. I'm not coming to look at your house. I'm not coming. Listen, I'll throw in some clothes in your laundry and, like, worry about it. I'm not here to judge because I've been there. And she would not accept it. Years later, she was like, I would have taken you up on that because I think she started to understand. But it is okay to ask for help. There's nothing wrong with
Mhm.
that. A lot of us say, I want it all. Just because you want it all doesn't mean that you have to do it. And that's what I figured. I said, oh, that's the key. I want to clean home, but like you said, I don't have to clean it. If there's a way that I can figure out how to get that done, let's try that. The other thing is being creative. Like
Yes.
if your kid has good friends, become friends with them. I was running late the other day. I text that friend and I said, "Hey, have you picked up your kid yet?" And they said, "No." I said, "Please hold mine there. You don't have to take them home with you. Just hold them there because I don't want to get charged the late fee. So can you do that?" And they were like, "Sure." So figuring out how to navigate these systems with other people.
Mhm.
Yes. Oh, I love it. Figuring out
Mhm.
navigate these systems with other people. And that's so important that you brought in the friends because many of us were in different states than our families were. And some of us are estranged. And so creating healthy relationships with other moms and mom bonding can be really important. And I'm going to
Mhm.
tell you, mom bonding can also be a source of stress,
Mhm.
because if you start comparing yourself to other moms,
Mhm.
actually find yourself um,
Mm.
coming up short. And I'll say I was working my daughter's first day of school. I was working in DC on the Hill, and I was able to see her, but they were taking me to the airport because it was as Affordable Care Act was being rolled out, the website thing. And so I was beating myself up about not going to the school with her on her first day of school. And mind you, I was doing some important stuff, but and so I was apologizing to her years later. And you know what? She didn't even remember it. So I've been beating myself up of not being there for her first day of school. And she didn't even remember. But then when I made it back from DC, because we had two, a place here and a place in DC, then I was talking to this mother. And the mother, oh my gosh, she made me feel, I won't say she contributed to me feeling really awful. She was like, no, I know all the mothers who are in my child's class. I don't know you. And I felt this big. Family. Listen, when you are engaging working mothers or stay at home mothers or whatever, please, please, please do not try to, and we don't knowingly do this, but don't try to minimize what the other person is doing, you know,
Mhm.
and contribute to them feeling bad about themselves because we already are doing that on our own. We don't need any help. But Dr. Booth, I like what you said about relying on others.
Mm.
And
Mhm.
navigating and delegating some of those tasks out and paying for some stuff. I mean, I love it.
Mhm.
Dr. Diamond, Dunbar, what say you?
Well, if I can, Dr. Ashley, you hit the nail on the head for with me with that, because even after getting married, I mean, right after getting married, it was some situation that had come up. I can't remember, but what I was saying to myself, well, and to my husband, I was saying, I want to do this, but I got to figure out what I'm gonna do with Kai. And he looked at me. He said, "What do you mean you got to figure out what you're gonna do with Kai?" I was like, "Well, I got to figure out who he's gonna stay with, what he's gonna do, where he's gonna go." And then he was like, you know, it's I know you've done it yourself by yourself for so long, but Christy, I'm here. I'm here. And that's what I'm here for. So whatever you need to do, you do that. Don't worry about Kai. I got Kai. And y'all, it just, for me, it was like one of those moments like, ooh, I got a whole husband and Kai got a whole bonus dad and I'm sitting here like still talking about I got to figure out what I'm gonna do with Kai before I can respond to my supervisor about what she needed me to do.
Ah,
And that was an aha moment,
yeah,
I because yeah.
yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah.
Oh, that's good. Now, family, I have not been doing a good job of paying attention to our comments, but our comments are lighting up. Dominique
Mhm.
Foots says, I have 3 adult children. Oh, bless you, Dominique Foots. Trust me, the saying, on your lap when they're babies and on your heart when they're adults is so very true. The parenting
Mhm.
never stops, but we must take time, self care for ourselves. April says, I would advise new mothers to try to build your family on one income. Oh, I like that. So that one parent is available to homeschool or help at school and work as needed. Build your village around others' families if possible. Oh, yes, I like that. Daily self judging your own parenting. We have to extend grace to ourselves. Yes, Hannah Destiny, yes. And Kwanzaa Boyd asked a question. What if you do ask for help and people talk about you because they
Mhm.
feel you can do it alone, especially when they have health issues? Mm. What if you ask for help and people talk about you because they feel you can do it alone, especially when you have health issues? It sounds
Mhm.
like that's not definitely not a safe place. And I think
Mm-mm.
we grow up so often hearing, when I remember when I asked my mom something, she would say, go look it up. And so we get into that mentality, just as you were saying, Christy, of doing for ourselves. And it's almost like um, you have to pay attention and identify who your safe places are before you do that, and maybe test out the waters a little bit. Can I leave them with you for an hour? I love it. Hannah Destiny says, ask anyway and let them talk because the mile you have to walk in your shoes are hard and most times cannot be filled by only others. Only you know what you need to do for self, and I mean, that sounds really good, but our pride and our feelings get hurt.
Mhm.
We, I think that the challenge is to build your tribe with people who get
Mhm.
you and are more likely to help you. I mean, I just remember growing up, my mom had girlfriends that I called Aunt Jane, Aunt Linda, Aunt Sheila. All of they were not her sisters. I
Mhm.
stayed at their house in the summer for at least a week or two each summer 1492 Sunset Boulevard in Texas, Arkansas. And all of those cousins that I don't call play cousins because we really grew up as cousins.
Right.
But sometimes you build your tribe, and it unfortunately may not look like the people who are related to you.
Mhm.
But I don't really remember staying at many of my aunt's house except for one. But I did stay at my aunt's house every summer, and so I would say don't let that bum you out. And
Mhm.
Hannah says again, sometimes you don't have a choice, you do, but other times you say, you know what, let me find my other tribe.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Right.
Mhm.
I really agree with that. I think for Miss Kwanzaa, the talking about you, I would say that has to do more with that individual
Right.
than it does with her asking for help.
Mhm.
Sometimes we get so used to our own experiences and how we've had to deal with things that we want to use that light and cast that light or darkness, however you want to think about it,
Mm.
onto the next person. And it's really more of a, well, I had to do it and didn't have help, so you should handle it yourself too. And that's not very loving. It's not
Right.
kind. And so, yeah, it's kind of like, okay, shake the dust off your feet, move on, find somebody that will be willing to step in and fill that space for you, because we need it. I mean, that's
Mhm.
the whole point of this particular show, is having a village. And I just don't think that we are created to be people that live and exist on our own. That is not, God
Right.
made us social creatures. And we are supposed to be able to depend on one another. But once you realize who you can and can't depend on, don't be mad about it. Just go, "Hey, okay, well, that's their problem. Let me move on. I'm gonna go find somebody else that can be in the struggle with me, and be a support that I need when I need it."
Mhm.
Exactly. Dr. Sherry, if I can even kind of piggyback off of a little something that you said, and I keep harping on because we're still in the honeymoon phase, with me and my husband, and so I something was going on, and I needed his help, and it took me a minute, and I asked, and I was like, and he said to me, he said, "Christy, I got you," and I'm like, I just started crying, you know. He said, I got you. And he said, and for you to ask, he said, I know it must be a real need because you don't ask anybody for anything, It's hard for me to ask for help. And so, yeah. And if they don't, like you said, shake that dust off, find somebody that will. But, you know,
Hmm. And many times, I mean, those are great points. And I will say there are times, I think, Ashley, you had talked about earlier when you knew you were going to be late calling the mom, build some
mhm,
relationships with the mothers so that you guys can kind of um, help each other. Now, I
mhm,
am, I, I don't do sleepovers. I wish I really wish I did, but we don't do sleepovers. But some afternoon trips, maybe you can say, hey, maybe you guys can balance who's going to pick up on a certain week, or having a weekend birthday party. I love birthday parties. I didn't do birthday parties. My husband would do the birthday parties, so I didn't have to make small talk. But I love birthday parties, particularly if I didn't have to take them to the to the party. Now, let's see.
mhm.
I'm going down here now. April Bowen, April, April. We feel each other. Why is she still pre-cleaning before the house is clean? Why, April? That's why I hadn't had my house clean, because I'm like, oh, I don't have time to pre-clean. So I feel you. I feel you. I feel you. And Hannah says something, Hannah Destiny, remembering who you are before the marriage, before the child, your likes, your dislikes, your standards, what you enjoyed, and not feeling the guilt for needing or having desire to indulge in the things that make up who you are as an individual prior to the responsibilities of the child or relationship is important as well. That Hannah Destiny got some wisdom. Now,
Right.
I don't, you guys can't see this. And so let me see here. I'm trying to share with you. Write this down. Ellis, if you would, the Self Care Prescription Journal. Powerful prompts to manage emotions, cultivate well being, and achieve your goals. This is written by a sister, Dr. Robin, Robyn, Gobin, Gobin. She's a PhD. But what I like about this journal that I keep beside my bed is that we talk about rest and self care like it's a big event, but finding ways to integrate rest and self care throughout your day, whether that be to put in, um, between appointments, have more breaks between appointments so you can go pee.
Right.
Teachers listening to me, which you're not. Doctors don't have, different ones who don't even have time to go, urinate. But having some more time to where you can go walk and bring in some nature and stuff like that. Having times that don't involve your children. One of my friends said, hey, I want to take you and my daughter out to dinner. And I said, no, because then the entire conversation is going to be towards my daughter. We are going out by ourselves so I can be an adult because I want an adult.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And to that point, Rhonda, that was one of the things I wanted to make a point about was self-care looks different for different people.
Mhm.
You may have, I'm not a bubble bath type of person. It irritates me to sit in a hot tub, just sitting there, just being hot. I think, and because I'm always on the move, I feel like I want to, I just don't do well just sitting, and with just doing nothing. And so it doesn't feel good to me to just sit in a bubble bath. But I can window shop all day long. If I can be by myself, go to the mall or some shopping center, I don't have to buy a thing. Just the idea of going and looking and that's what I would do sometimes if I lived close enough to it, if it or worked close enough to like a Target. There were times when I, depending on where I was working, there were stores that were close by. And if I just needed to, like, I have to get out of this clinic for 15, 20 minutes. I'm not going to have a whole hour lunch, but I'm going to go and I'm just going, go and look. And sometimes when you do that, you find the best deals.
Right.
When you're not looking for anything. So, it looks different. Somebody might go, hey, let's go, hike Pinnacle Mountain. Well, that sounds like work. I don't want to Pinnacle Mountain. I just want to curl up, in my bed or get on my big chair in my office and watch TV for a little while, So self-care looks different. So you have to really stick with what it is, don't get, when your girls want to go out and that's not really what you feel like doing, don't do it. If that's going to be the only window of opportunity you have in that little bit of time to rest, do what makes you feel good and what is going to give you a sense of peace and relaxation in that particular moment.
Oh, that's good. That's good. I've been asked to say the name of the book again. It's the Self Care Prescription Journal, Powerful Prompts to Manage Emotions, Cultivate Well-Being, and Achieve Your Goals by Robyn Gobin. And we'll try to get that on in the chat. There is also a comment. If we could put the comment about a child not speaking to the mother anymore. What encouragement would you all provide to the young lady who said, her child isn't speaking to her anymore? They're 24 and they aren't speaking to her anymore. And that has to be, tough. Because my goal as a parent is to not have my child on a stripper pole or for me to show up on Oprah with her saying how awful a parent I am. So, you want these amazing things for your children. And sometimes we do the best we could, the best we can with the energy we have. And notice how they say the best we can, but the best we can with the energy we have, with the responsibilities we have or whatever. And so, Kwanzaa, I would just say, hugs to you, darling. I know that it's tough. One thing that I will say is, pray about that situation. Try to give them their space. If you feel led to, perhaps write a letter. It sounds like they may feel offended. Write a letter to where you apologize if you feel something like that. But certainly, consider therapy. This is one of those scenarios where people mean well, but they will give you counsel that will probably be more harmful because they're judging you by through their lens, and their lens. They may not get the whole picture. And so, my first recommendation, because that sounds heartbreaking, to invest, in your child and then do that would be, therapy. Therapy helps you to own your responsibility in it. And it also helps you to forgive them as well. And that's one of the things that we don't probably talk about enough when we're talking about parenting is how, number one, our children can break our hearts and offend us and terrorize us, and hurt us. But number two is how sometimes we definitely have to forgive, and I don't say forgive first, but process what has happened with them, so that we can make better decisions in the future for ourselves and for them. Um, and while they may have blocked you right now, it sounds like that means they're not ready. But it sounds like you're ready to start processing and healing. And so, my best counsel for you is not to do this with a very well-meaning friend or pastor, but to find somebody who is adept at toxic relationships or parent-child relationships and work that out. So, thank you for being vulnerable and for sharing that with us. And my heart and thoughts are going out to you. And actually, I won't have you guys in with that because we only have just a few more minutes. And so, as we're wrapping up, I will say this can be a part two. And I know your schedules are busy, so we may not have to be, but this definitely needs to be a part two to it because we got out of time. There are some things that you knew you wanted to say. And so, in the next minute or two, next 40 seconds, each of you say what you wanted to say that you didn't get a chance to. Ashley, we're going to start with you because we've been having trouble with you with your mic. So we'll start with you. Ashley? All right. Then we'll move to someone else.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, go ahead. Go.
Oh, you hear me? Okay, great. What I will say is be self-aware, make sure that you know what you want, and then be able to communicate that with the other people who are involved. So that way you are now able to create boundaries. You can no is perfectly accepted. If you need time or whatever, have that space there so that it is respected time and no one comes in that time need, and be intentional about putting it into practice so that you can feel well and feel whole.
Be intentional. Communicate your needs. I love it. Next.
Okay, well, I'll say, of course, I was thinking what Dr. Ashley said about the communicating what I need because I've not been great at that. And so it presents a challenge for others to try to determine what I need when I can't even effectively communicate what I need. So that's something that I have been working on. I've been trying to push back the tears and allow the communication to flow, because just because I'm crying, that doesn't mean you understand or know. I need to be able to talk through the tears and let you know. So that's been my biggest struggle, but that is what I am working on. It's just being able to communicate what I need. And then when I do, be okay with saying no. No is no by itself is a complete sentence. No.
Yes.
No apologies, just no.
Good. Communication. I love it. Setting boundaries with your no. Dr. Diamond.
So I would say, first of all, I also want to give a shout out to a friend that I had in Texarkana that when I was away from my family was very helpful to me. She didn't have children at the time, and I didn't want to let this end without mentioning the help that I had, a different tribe that was not blood related. There's a scripture that says that we should labor to rest. And in the Bible, it's speaking in terms of spiritual terms in this life, but I think it really apply, our lives going forward in our eternal life. But it applies to I believe, our lives now. We really, going back to what Dr. Ashley said about being intentional. Being intentional means you got to put forth an effort. Mm-hmm. You have to put forth an effort to even find rest. Mm-hmm. And so part of that effort is also teaching your children. While we may look for ways to get other people involved with doing things like cleaning around the house and stuff like that, I've known people who feel like they've got the mothers that go around picking up after their kids when their kids are old enough to learn how to put things up in a way themselves and do some cleaning. So, make sure that you are training your children to do the things that will also make life easier for you and help them in their lives as they get older, because at some point, again, they don't stay babies forever. And so they're going to have to know how to take care of themselves. They need to know how to call the doctor's office and make their own appointments when they get older. They need to, they need to know how to mop a floor when they get older. Start training your children early to do those things that will also be a benefit to you.
Wonderful. Right. Ladies, I just want to thank you for your time. Audience, I want to thank you for tuning in. What I'm going to say is, 3 mothers who are nailing it. Drop their names in the chat and just give them a shout out because they're nailing it. And you may want to share this with some people that aren't nailing it. Just share it on your timeline. I know that this is something that I wish that I'd watched some 13 years ago. And so I appreciate you. Always want to give kudos to my producer, Ellis Dean, for doing his thing, and blackdoctor.org for hosting us. And I just want to thank you again, ladies, for all that you do. I respect you. I think so highly of you, and I appreciate the words of wisdom. Family, next week, tune in, as you always do, my loyal viewers, to I'm Not Crazy, But... Same time, same place, 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. Central Standard Time, 12 p.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern Time. Remember to step outside of your comfort zone and make an impact. Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.